I'm Chloe, 32, female, and when my 8-month-old son passed away, my parents chose to host my sister's 30th birthday party instead of attending his funeral. The silence in our house is the loudest thing I have ever heard. It's a physical presence, a heavy blanket that smothers every room. It's been 3 weeks since we buried our son Leo. My husband Liam and I move through our days like ghosts, navigating the spaces where a baby's laughter should be, where the scent of baby powder should linger, where a high chair should sit, sticky with mushed bananas. But there is only the silence and the emptiness. And in that void, the memory of a phone call plays on a loop, a conversation that shattered the final, fragile pieces of my heart. A conversation with my own mother, who told me she couldn't come to her grandson's funeral because the caterer for my sister's birthday party was non-refundable. To understand how a mother could say that to her grieving daughter, you'd have to understand the ecosystem of my family. It was a solar system with a single, blazing sun. My younger sister, Megan. The rest of us, me, my father, and even my mother to an extent, were just planets orbiting her, our paths and temperatures dictated by her gravitational pull. My mother, Brenda, was the chief astronomer, dedicating her life to charting Megan's course, while my father, Robert, simply nodded and agreed with the findings. This wasn't a recent development. The favoritism was woven into the very fabric of my childhood. I was the quiet, bookish child, the one who found solace in the hushed aisles of the library where I now work. Megan was the firecracker, the performer, the one who demanded attention and always received it. I remember my 5th-grade spelling bee. I had practiced for weeks, memorizing words that felt huge and important in my mouth. I was the last one standing from my school. When I came home, clutching a blue ribbon, my mother was on the phone, coordinating a congratulations sleepover for Megan, who had just been picked for the junior cheerleading squad. My ribbon was taped to the fridge, beneath a professionally printed 8x10 photo of Megan in her new uniform. "That's nice, honey," my mother had said, her eyes already scanning a list of names for the party. The disparity grew as we did. When I graduated from university with honors, my parents sent a card with a $100 bill tucked inside. They didn't attend the ceremony because, as they explained, it was the same weekend as Megan's annual friend group trip to a wine festival, and she would have been devastated to go without them. I remember sitting in a sea of graduates, watching other parents weep with pride, and feeling a familiar, dull ache of invisibility. 2 years later, when Megan decided she didn't want to finish college and instead wanted to become a lifestyle coach and social media influencer, my parents didn't blink. They co-signed the lease on a chic downtown condo for her and gave her a business startup fund that, as I later learned, was 5 figures. Meanwhile, when Liam and I were painstakingly saving for a down payment on our modest, 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, my father sat us down and gave us a lecture on fiscal responsibility. "You can't expect handouts, Chloe," he'd said, his face stern. "You and Liam have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet." We had never asked for a handout. We just wanted their pride, their encouragement. Instead, we got a lecture. While Megan posted pictures of her new espresso machine, a housewarming gift from them, with the hashtag #BestParentsEver. Even our wedding was a study in contrast. Liam and I had a small, lovely ceremony at a local park, paying for it ourselves. My parents contributed a modest amount towards the catering and complained about the folding chairs. A year later, Megan wasn't even engaged, but my mother was already showing her swatches for a hypothetical dream wedding, talking about venues that cost more than our car. The birth of Leo was supposed to change things. He was their first grandchild. For a while, it seemed like it might. When I was pregnant, my mother would call more often, asking about my health. They visited us in the hospital when Leo was born, holding him for a few minutes while Megan took a flurry of photos for her Instagram feed. "Auntie-life is the best life," she captioned a selfie of her puckering her lips next to Leo's sleeping face. But the novelty soon wore off. They were too busy to babysit. They lived an hour away, and the drive was such a hassle. Yet, that same drive was never a hassle when Megan needed someone to water her plants while she was on a sponsored trip to Bali. Liam saw it all. He was my rock, my validator. "It's not you, Chloe," he would say, wrapping his arms around me after a particularly stinging phone call with my mother. "It's them. It has always been them." He was right, but the child in me never stopped hoping. A small, stubborn part of me believed that one day they would see me. That one day, my needs would be as important as Megan's wants. It took the worst tragedy of my life to finally, brutally, extinguish that hope forever. It began with a cough. A small, wet sound in the dead of night that pricked my ears and sent a jolt of anxiety through me. Leo had been a little fussy for a day or two, but babies are often fussy. He had a slight fever, but we gave him the infant medicine the doctor recommended, and it seemed to help. Liam and I told ourselves it was just a cold, a rite of passage for an 8-month-old. But this cough was different. It sounded heavy, like it was being dredged up from somewhere deep inside his tiny chest. By morning, his breathing was shallow and rapid. His little chest rose and fell too quickly, a frantic rhythm that terrified me. His skin, usually so pink and warm, was pale and clammy. We didn't wait. Liam drove while I sat in the back with Leo, my hand on his forehead, whispering reassurances that were more for me than for him. "It's okay, my sweet boy. Mommy and Daddy are here. We're going to the doctor." The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and the antiseptic smell of fear. They took one look at Leo and rushed us back. Words I had only heard in medical dramas were suddenly being used for my son. Oxygen saturation, respiratory distress, chest X-ray. They put a tiny mask over his face, and the sight of it, so big against his small features, shattered my composure. I began to cry, silent, hot tears tracking down my face. Liam stood beside me, his hand a firm, grounding pressure on my back. The diagnosis was swift and brutal: severe bacterial pneumonia. The infection was aggressive and had taken hold with frightening speed. They admitted him to the pediatric intensive care unit, a place no parent ever wants to see. Our world shrank to the size of that hospital room, a space filled with the rhythmic beeping and whirring of machines that were keeping our son alive. I called my parents from the hallway, my voice trembling. "It's Leo," I choked out. "He's in the hospital, it's serious, pneumonia." "Oh goodness," my mother said. Her voice had a distant quality, as if I were telling her about a problem with my car. "Pneumonia? Are you sure? Don't they just give antibiotics for that?" "It's not that simple, Mom," I said, my patience already frayed. "He's in the PICU. He's having trouble breathing." There was a pause. I could hear Megan's voice in the background, talking loudly about something. "Well, keep us updated," Brenda said finally. "Robert and I are right in the middle of finalizing the table arrangements for Megan's party. You can't imagine the stress." I couldn't speak. The disconnect was so profound it felt like a physical blow. My son was fighting for his life, and she was talking about table arrangements. "I have to go," I whispered, and hung up the phone. Liam found me leaning against the wall, the phone still clenched in my hand, my knuckles white. He didn't have to ask. He just pulled me into his arms and held me. The next 48 hours were a living nightmare. We didn't leave the hospital. We took turns sleeping in the uncomfortable chair by Leo's crib, our hands always reaching through the plastic bars to touch his foot or stroke his hair. We watched the numbers on the monitors, our hearts leaping with every small improvement and plummeting with every dip. The doctors and nurses were incredible, a team of quiet heroes moving with calm efficiency. They spoke to us with compassion but didn't sugarcoat the reality. Leo was very, very sick. During a brief moment when his fever broke and his breathing seemed to stabilize, a flicker of hope ignited in my chest. He opened his eyes, his deep blue eyes, and looked right at me. He was groggy from the medication, but he knew I was there. I sang to him, the same lullaby I sang every night. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." His tiny fingers curled around mine, a weak but definite grip. "He's a fighter," Liam whispered, his voice thick with emotion. We clung to that moment, a jewel of hope in an ocean of fear. My mother sent a text message. "Any news? Hope he's feeling better. The new caterer is trying to substitute the mini quiches, can you believe it?" I didn't reply, I couldn't. It felt like a message from a different universe, a place where mini quiches mattered more than a child's breath. Liam's parents, on the other hand, drove 2 hours to be there. They brought us food we didn't know we needed and coffee we couldn't taste. They didn't offer platitudes. His mother, Carol, just sat with me, holding my hand while I cried, her quiet presence a profound comfort. His father, David, took Liam for walks, giving him a space to talk or just be silent. They were family. In that sterile, terrifying place, they showed me what family truly was. The hope was short-lived. On the third night an alarm began to blare. Ursa's voice, suddenly sharp and urgent, cut through the quiet hum of the unit. "We need a doctor in here now." Everything became a flurry of motion. People in scrubs rushed into the room, surrounding Leo's crib. They were moving too fast, speaking in a language I couldn't comprehend. Someone gently but firmly guided Liam and me out into the hallway. The door closed, and we were left staring at the blank wood, the frantic beeps and shouts muffled but still audible. We just stood there, holding on to each other, the world tilting on its axis. Time ceased to exist. It could have been minutes or hours. Finally, the door opened. The doctor, a kind woman with tired eyes, stepped out. Her face was a mask of gentle sorrow, and before she even said the words, I knew. I knew by the way her shoulders slumped, by the way she couldn't quite meet my eye. "We did everything we could," she said, her voice soft. "His lungs just couldn't fight it anymore. I am so sorry." A sound escaped my throat, a raw, primal noise of a pain so deep it felt like it was tearing me apart from the inside out. Liam caught me as my knees gave way. The world went black at the edges, the fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway dissolving into nothing. My sunshine was gone. The hours after Leo passed are a hollow echo in my memory. The world moved in slow motion, muffled and distant. The hospital staff guided us through a fog of paperwork and quiet condolences. They let us hold him one last time. He was so still, so peaceful. All the tubes and wires were gone. He just looked like he was sleeping, my beautiful boy. We memorized the curve of his cheek, the tiny whorl of hair at his crown, the feel of his small, cool hand in ours. Leaving that room without him was the single hardest thing I have ever done. It felt like walking away from a part of my own body. We drove home in absolute silence, the car's seat in the back empty, a silent monument to our loss. The house was exactly as we'd left it, filled with the evidence of a life that was supposed to continue. A half-empty bottle on the counter, a colorful playmat on the floor, a stack of freshly washed baby clothes on the dryer. Each object was a fresh stab of pain. Liam was my anchor. While I felt myself dissolving, he moved with a purpose born of pure love and grief. He made phone calls, first to his parents, his voice cracking as he delivered the news, then to our close friends. Each call was a fresh wave of agony, making it more real. Then it was my turn. I knew I had to call my parents. A part of me, a naive, wounded part, needed my mother. Despite everything, I wanted her to wrap her arms around me and tell me it would be okay, even though I knew it wouldn't. I sat on the edge of our bed, the phone heavy in my hand, and dialed the number. My mother answered on the second ring, her voice bright and flustered. "Chloe, perfect timing. Your father and I are trying to decide on the balloon arch. Do you think iridescent or classic gold would be better for Megan's 30, flirty and thriving theme?" The words were so jarring, so completely disconnected from my reality that I couldn't form a response. I just sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the static. "Chloe, are you there?" she asked, a hint of irritation in her voice. "Mom," I managed to say, my own voice a stranger's, thin and brittle. "It's Leo." "What about him? Is he home?" I took a shaky breath. "He's gone, Mom. He passed away, a few hours ago." The line went quiet, not the quiet of shock or sorrow, but the quiet of someone processing an inconvenience. I could hear her breathing. "Oh," she said finally. The word was small and flat. "Oh, that's awful." "Awful," I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "My son is dead, and you say it's awful." "Well, what do you want me to say, Chloe?" she snapped, her defensiveness kicking in immediately. "Of course it's terrible, it's a tragedy, your poor thing." It sounded rehearsed, like a line from a card. "I need you," I whispered, the words costing me everything. "Liam and I, we have to plan a funeral." Another pause, this one longer. I could hear her moving around, the rustle of papers. A funeral, she repeated slowly. Right, when were you thinking of having it? I don't know, I said, tears starting to stream down my face. Maybe this Saturday. We have to talk to the funeral home tomorrow. This Saturday, her voice sharpened. Chloe, you can't be serious. This Saturday is Megan's birthday, it's her party. We have over 100 people coming. The venue is booked, the caterer is paid for. Everything is non-refundable. I felt the blood drain from my face. I must have misheard her. She couldn't possibly be saying what I thought she was saying. What? The party, she said, speaking slowly as if to a child. It's this Saturday. We've been planning it for a year. We can't just cancel it. It would devastate Megan. It's her 30th. It's a milestone. A milestone, my voice rose, shaking with a mixture of grief and disbelief. A birthday party is a milestone. My son is dead. My 8-month-old son just died, and you're worried about a party. Now don't take that tone with me, she warned, her voice turning cold and hard. You're being hysterical. Of course, we are sad about Leo. We are. But the world doesn't just stop. We have commitments. We made a promise to your sister. We can't let all those people down. Let people down. I was on my feet now, pacing the bedroom. Liam was watching me, his face etched with concern. You're worried about letting down party guests. What about me? What about your grandson? He's not a commitment you can just cancel. It's not the same, and you know it, she said. Look, have the funeral on a weekday. Next week, maybe. We could probably come on a Tuesday afternoon if we move some things around. Robert agrees with me. It's the most sensible solution. I stopped pacing. The world came into a sharp, painful focus. Sensible, that's what this was to her. A logistical problem. My son's life and death, my earth-shattering grief, was an item on her calendar that needed to be rescheduled to accommodate a better one. No, I said, my voice suddenly calm, all the fight draining out of me, replaced by a chilling certainty. No, what do you mean no? We're trying to be accommodating, Chloe. Don't come, I said. Don't come to the funeral, don't call me again. Before she could respond, I ended the call. I lowered the phone and stared at it. Liam was there in an instant, his arms wrapping around me as a racking sob tore through my body. He held me as I crumpled, the full weight of the betrayal crashing down on top of the grief. It was a pain so immense, so complete, that I thought it would physically break me. My own parents, my own mother. They had chosen a party over their grandson. They had chosen Megan again. But this time, the stakes weren't a ribbon or a graduation ceremony. The stake was the memory of my son, and they had just trampled all over it. The days that followed were a blur of impossible tasks. How do you choose a casket for a baby? How do you write a eulogy for a life that was only just beginning? Every decision felt like a fresh betrayal of Leo, a confirmation that his future was gone. Liam and I moved through the process hand in hand, a two-person island in a sea of sorrow. We were a team, united in our grief and in our quiet determination to honor our son in the best way we knew how. The funeral home director was a man named Mr. Henderson, a gentle soul with kind eyes who had clearly seen too much of this kind of pain. He guided us with a soft-spoken grace that was a balm to our raw nerves. He never rushed us, never pushed. When I broke down trying to choose a photo for the service program, he simply handed me a box of tissues and a glass of water and said, "Take all the time you need. We'll get through this together." The silence from my side of the family was absolute. Not a call, not a text, not a card. It was as if I had ceased to exist the moment I hung up on my mother. Megan didn't reach out either. I imagined her, blissfully unaware or, more likely, willfully ignorant, finalizing her party playlist and choosing her birthday outfit. The thought was so grotesque it made me feel physically ill. They were not just absent. They had erased themselves from our tragedy, deeming it an inconvenient conflict in their social calendar. In stark contrast, Liam's family enveloped us in a cocoon of unwavering support. His parents, Carol and David, were at our house within hours of that horrible phone call. They didn't come with advice or judgment. They came with grocery bags and a quiet resolve to simply be there. Carol cleaned our kitchen and did laundry, performing small acts of normalcy that kept the world from spinning completely off its axis. David sat with Liam in the backyard, talking about everything and nothing, giving him an outlet that didn't involve having to be strong for me. His sister, Rachel, who lived 3 states away, got on a plane the next day. She walked into our house, took one look at my face, and just held me for what felt like an eternity. She helped me go through Leo's clothes, folding his tiny onesies and sleepers with a tenderness that made me weep. We packed most of them away, but she suggested we keep his favorite blue blanket out. "So you can hold it when you need to," she said softly. Our friends rallied too. They organized a meal train, and every evening, a different person would drop off a hot dinner on our porch, sending a text to let us know it was there so we didn't have to face anyone if we weren't up to it. They sent flowers and cards filled with heartfelt memories of meeting Leo, of his gummy smile or bright, curious eyes. Each message was a small testament to the fact that he had existed, that his short life had touched others, that he mattered. These acts of kindness, both big and small, were the only things that kept me from sinking completely. They were a lifeline in the darkness, a powerful reminder that while the family I was born into had failed me in the most catastrophic way imaginable, I had managed to build a different kind of family. A family of choice, bound not by blood, but by love, respect, and genuine human decency. Planning the service with Liam and his family felt right. We chose a small, simple ceremony at the chapel attached to the funeral home. We picked songs that were gentle and hopeful. Liam decided he wanted to speak, to share a few words about his love for his son. I couldn't bring myself to do it. The words were trapped behind a wall of grief in my throat. Instead, I put together a slideshow of photos: Leo in the bath, Leo sleeping on Liam's chest, Leo giggling as our dog licked his face. A collage of a life measured in moments, not years. The night before the funeral, I sat in what was supposed to be Leo's nursery. The crib was empty. The mobile of friendly felt animals hung motionless above it. I held his little blue blanket, pressing it to my face, trying to find his scent, a trace of him that the laundry hadn't washed away. Liam found me there, sitting on the floor in the dark. He sat down beside me, not saying a word, and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. We sat like that for a long time, two broken people trying to hold each other together. "I can't believe they're not coming," I whispered into the darkness. It was a statement of fact, but my heart still phrased it as a question. "I know," he said, his voice heavy. "I'm so sorry, Chloe. I'm sorry they're putting you through this on top of everything else." "It's not just that they're not coming," I said, the truth of it solidifying in my mind. It's the choice they made. They looked at our pain, at Leo's memory, and they weighed it against a party, and the party won." I took a shuddering breath. How do I ever come back from that? How do they? Liam was quiet for a moment. "They don't," he said, his voice firm with a certainty that startled me. "And you don't have to, we don't have to. Our family is right here in this house. It's you and me and the love we have for Leo. That's what matters, that's what's real." He was right. The people who would be there tomorrow, Carol, David, Rachel, our friends, they were our real family. The people who showed up. The people who saw our pain and didn't look away. The people who understood that some things, like love and loss, are not negotiable. They cannot be rescheduled for a Tuesday. The morning of the funeral, the sky was a solemn, unforgiving gray. It matched the color of my world. Getting dressed was a monumental effort. I chose a simple black dress, the one I'd worn to Liam's grandfather's memorial service a year ago, a time that now seemed like a different, simpler lifetime. Looking in the mirror, I saw a stranger. Her eyes were hollow, her face pale and puffy from crying. There were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Liam stood behind me, his hands on my shoulders, his own reflection looking just as weary. "You're the strongest person I know," he whispered to my reflection. I didn't feel strong. I felt fragile, like a pane of glass that was already fractured and could shatter with the slightest touch. The drive to the chapel was silent. The streets were filled with people going about their Saturday, running errands, heading to brunch, living their lives. It felt profoundly unfair that the world could just keep moving when ours had stopped. The chapel was filled with more people than I expected. Our friends, my colleagues from the library, Liam's coworkers from the high school, and his extended family. They filled the pews, their presence a quiet, supportive hum. There were 2 rows right at the front that had been reserved for my family. They remained starkly, brutally empty. Every time I glanced at them, it was like a physical blow, a fresh reminder of their choice. The service began. Mr. Henderson spoke with warmth about the preciousness of life. A friend of ours played a beautiful, mournful piece on the cello. Then Liam walked to the podium. He held a single piece of paper, but he barely looked at it. He spoke from the heart, his voice thick with unshed tears but steady. My son Leo was only with us for 8 months, he began, looking out at the faces of our friends and family. But in that short time, he taught me more about love than I had learned in the 34 years before him. He taught me about joy, the pure, unfiltered joy of watching him discover his own hands, or the way his whole body would convulse with giggles when I blew raspberries on his belly. He paused, taking a deep breath. The silence he has left behind is deafening. But the love he brought into our lives is louder, and that's what we will carry with us, not the silence, but the love. He finished, and the chapel was filled with the sound of quiet weeping. My own tears, which I had been holding back, flowed freely. As the slideshow of Leo's photos played on the screen, a montage of a life so full of happiness, the pain was almost unbearable. That was my boy, my sunshine. After the service, we drove to the cemetery. A small group gathered under a tent as a light drizzle began to fall. The finality of watching his tiny casket being lowered into the earth is a memory that will be burned into my mind forever. It was the end. The absolute, irreversible end. We held a small reception back at our house. People milled around, speaking in hushed tones, sharing food and memories. It was comforting in a way to be surrounded by so much love. Liam's mom, Carol, never left my side, refilling my water, bringing me a plate of food I couldn't eat, her presence a silent shield. It was Carol's niece, a cousin of Liam's named Sarah, who inadvertently delivered the final, devastating blow. Sarah was a kind, quiet girl, around 25, who was always on her phone. She approached me hesitantly, her face pale with shock. "Chloe," she whispered, holding her phone out. I think you need to see this. I am so sorry." I looked at her, confused. She had Instagram open. On the screen was my sister Megan's profile, and she was posting stories. Live, right now. The first video showed a crowd of people in a lavishly decorated event hall. A huge, shimmering balloon arch, iridescent, I noted with a detached sense of irony, framed a dance floor. The caption, in sparkly pink letters, read, "Let the celebrations begin, Meg's Dirty 30. My hand started to shake. Sarah swiped to the next story. It was a close-up of a champagne tower, bubbly liquid cascading down a pyramid of glasses. Then the next one. A selfie of Megan, my mother, and my father. They were all wearing party hats and smiling, broad, unpenciled smiles. My mother was holding a glass of champagne, her head tilted back in laughter. My father had his arm around Megan, beaming with pride. The timestamp on the video was from 45 minutes earlier, the exact time we were standing at Leo's graveside. My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't breathe. The sounds of the reception faded away into a dull roar in my ears. I swiped to the next story myself. It was a video of my mother on the dance floor, dancing with one of her friends, laughing without a care in the world. The caption Megan had written over it, "Mom living her best life." The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. The screen cracked. Carol rushed over. "Chloe, honey, what is it? What's wrong?" I couldn't answer. I just stared at the cracked phone on the floor, replaying the images in my mind. My mother laughing, my father beaming, my sister celebrating while I was burying my son. They weren't just absent. They weren't just missing the funeral. They were celebrating. They were broadcasting their utter, joyous indifference to my pain for the entire world to see. The betrayal was so absolute, so monstrous, it defied comprehension. It wasn't just neglect. It was a gleeful, public desecration of my son's memory. It was a declaration. They weren't just choosing a party, they were dancing on his grave. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it turned to ice. The last vestiges of hope, of love, of any sense of familial duty I had for them died. They were strangers to me, worse than strangers. They were the people who partied, while my world burned down. For a week, I existed in a state of frozen shock. The grief for Leo was a constant, heavy presence, but now it was overlaid with a cold, hard layer of rage. Liam handled everything. He thanked people for their condolences. He returned the serving dishes from the meal train. He shielded me from the world. He had seen the Instagram stories, too. His quiet fury on my behalf was a strange and terrible comfort. He didn't offer advice. He just waited, knowing I would have to be the one to decide what came next. The decision crystallized on a Tuesday morning. I woke up, and for the first time in weeks, the fog in my head had cleared. It was replaced by a sharp, clear certainty. I could not let it go. I could not allow them to believe that their actions were acceptable, that they could simply go on with their lives after inflicting such a wound. I needed to face them. Not for an apology, I knew with bone-deep certainty that I would never get one. I needed to do it for me and for Leo. I needed to say my piece, so I could close this chapter and begin to heal. I'm going to their house, I told Liam over a cup of coffee I didn't drink. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. Are you sure? Yes, I said, my voice steady, and I need you to come with me. I'll be right beside you, he said without a moment's hesitation. We drove to my parents' house that afternoon. The 1-hour drive was silent, but it as a different kind of silence than the ones we had shared before. This was a silence of grim purpose. As we pulled into the familiar driveway, I felt a tremor of the old anxiety, the ingrained feeling of a daughter about to be judged and found wanting. I pushed it down, replacing it with the image of my mother laughing on the dance floor. My mother, Brenda, opened the door. Her face, which was smiling when she opened it, fell when she saw us. Chloe, Liam, what a surprise. She didn't invite us in. We're coming in, Mom, I said, my voice devoid of warmth. I walked past her into the living room. Liam followed, closing the door behind him. The house was still in party recovery mode. A stray gold balloon drooped sadly in a corner. There was a stack of gift bags on the dining room table. My father, Robert, was reading the newspaper in his armchair. He looked up, startled. Megan was there too, sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, her expression a mixture of annoyance and surprise. What is this? Megan asked, putting her phone down. An ambush. I'd call it a long overdue conversation, Liam said, his voice low and firm. He stood slightly behind me, a silent pillar of support. We saw the pictures, I said, getting straight to the point. My voice was eerily calm. And the videos from the party. My mother had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. She busied herself fluffing a cushion on the sofa. I'm sure you're upset, Chloe. We knew you would be, but we really were in a bind. A bind, I repeated, the word tasting like poison. You were in a bind, so you posted stories on Instagram while my son's casket was being lowered into the ground. Tell me, was that part of the bind? Was that non-refundable too? Megan scoffed from the couch. Oh, here we go. We knew you'd make this all about you. You always have to be the center of attention. I turned my head slowly to look at her. The audacity of her statement was breathtaking. The center of attention. Megan, my son died. I was at his funeral. A funeral you were invited to. A funeral you chose to skip so you could celebrate yourself. And you think I'm the one who needs to be the center of attention. It was my 30th birthday, she shot back, her voice rising. It's a huge deal. I'm sorry for your loss, I really am, but you can't expect the entire world to stop because something bad happened to you. You cast this dark cloud over what was supposed to be the best week of my life. I stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time. The depth of her self-absorption was a bottomless pit. She wasn't just thoughtless, she was fundamentally incapable of empathy. I turned my attention back to my parents. And you? I asked, looking from my mother's defensive face to my father's avoidant one. You enabled this, you funded it, You danced and you smiled and you posed for pictures. Dad, I looked directly at my father, who was now staring intently at a page of his newspaper as if it held the secrets of the universe. Do you have anything to say? Any justification for your behavior? Robert cleared his throat. He wouldn't look at me. Your mother and I, we did what we thought was best, he mumbled. Megan was so looking forward to it, we couldn't break her heart. But you could break mine, I said, the statement landing in the silent room. That was a choice you were willing to make. You're being overly dramatic, Chloe, my mother cut in, her voice sharp. You're grieving and you're lashing out. It's understandable, but it's not fair. We are your family. We love you. But we love your sister too. We had to make a difficult choice. No, I said, shaking my head. The calmness I felt was absolute. It wasn't a difficult choice. It was an easy one for you. It's always been easy. You always choose her. But this wasn't about choosing between your two daughters. This was about choosing between common decency and monstrous selfishness, between supporting your grieving child and throwing a party. And you chose the party. I took a deep breath. This was it, the final words. I didn't come here for an apology. I came here to say goodbye. The three of you are not my family anymore. A family shows up. A family cares. A family doesn't post party pictures during a funeral. You are strangers to me now. Megan rolled her eyes. My father just continued to stare at his paper. My mother's face hardened. If that's the way you want to be, she said icily. It's not what I want, I said, the last bit of pain surfacing. It's what you've made necessary, for my own survival, for the sake of my husband, and to honor the memory of my son, which you so carelessly trampled on. I looked at Liam. He nodded. We turned and walked toward the door. We didn't look back. As Liam opened the front door, I heard Megan's voice, laced with venom. Fine, see if we care. Don't come crawling back when you get lonely. We stepped out into the fresh, and Liam closed the door behind us, shutting out their world for good. I didn't feel relief, not yet. I just felt a profound, cavernous emptiness. But for the first time, it felt like an emptiness I could one day fill with something new, something better. The drive home was the beginning of a new kind of silence. It wasn't the heavy, smothering silence of early grief, nor the purposeful, tense silence before the confrontation. This was a quiet, empty silence, the silence of a severed limb. It ached, but it was a clean wound. There was no more hoping, no more waiting for a call that would never come, no more agonizing over their choices. The door was closed. The first thing I did when we got home was block them. I went through my phone and blocked Brenda's number, Robert's number, and Megan's number. Then I went onto every social media platform and blocked their accounts. It felt ceremonial, like signing a declaration of independence. With each tap of the screen, I felt a small knot of tension in my shoulders release. I was cutting the tethers to the people who had caused me the most pain in my life, at the time I needed them the most. The weeks that followed were hard. Grief is not a linear path. It's a tangled maze of good days and bad days. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, the weight of Leo's absence too much to bear. And there were moments when the rage at my former family would surge, hot and fresh, as if the betrayal had just happened. I would find myself wanting to unblock their numbers just to send them a message filled with all the vitriol I had held back. But I never did. Liam was my strength. He encouraged me to find a grief counselor, and I did. Talking to a neutral third party, someone who wasn't emotionally invested, was incredibly helpful. She gave me tools to process not just the loss of Leo, but the complex grief of losing my entire family of origin at the same time. She called it a disenfranchised grief, a loss that society doesn't fully acknowledge, and giving it a name made it feel more real and manageable. Began to build new traditions, new ways to honor Leo. On the 15th of every month, the day he passed, we do something kind for someone else. We volunteer at the local animal shelter because Leo loved our dog so much. We donated all of Leo's baby things, except for a few precious keepsakes, to a charity that helps new mothers in need. Turning our pain into something positive for others became a form of healing. We filled the house not with his absence, but with the legacy of his love. Liam's family became our anchor. Carol and David would visit often, never overstaying, always bringing a sense of warmth and normalcy. They talked about Leo openly and lovingly, sharing their own memories of holding him, of his smile. They never once made us feel like our grief was an inconvenience. They showed us, through consistent action, what unconditional family love looks like. One day, about 6 months after the funeral, a letter arrived. It was addressed to me in my mother's handwriting. I held it for a long time, my heart pounding. Liam saw me with it and simply said, "It's your choice. Whatever you decide to do, I support you." I thought about opening it. I wondered if it contained an apology, a flicker of remorse. But then I thought about the cost of letting them back in, the risk to my fragile peace. An apology now couldn't erase the laughter in the party videos. It couldn't fill the empty pews at the funeral. It couldn't give me back those moments when I needed a mother and got a party planner instead. I walked to the kitchen, turned on the gas stove, and held the corner of the envelope to the flame. I watched it catch fire, curling into black ash. I let the ashes fall into the sink and washed them down the drain. It wasn't an act of anger, but one of self-preservation. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed, and some people don't deserve a second chance to hurt you. Today, the silence in our house is different. It's no longer the loud, suffocating silence of loss. It's a quieter, more peaceful silence. It's the silence of a home where two people are healing, slowly but surely. Sometimes I still feel the phantom limb of my old family and ache for what should have been. But then I look at Liam, at the family we have forged in the fire of our greatest tragedy, and I know we made the right choice. We chose peace. We chose healing. We chose each other. And in the quiet moments, I can still hear the echo of Leo's love. It's louder than the silence. It always will be.